The space race was one of the major events in the Cold War, occurring during the mid to late 20th century. It followed the pattern of rivalry and duel for authority between the US and USSR, two of the world's major superpowers. This space race battle consisted on the supremacy in space exploration between both countries, and was of great significance as it would establish which country had the finest and most advanced science, technology, and economic system. This struggle would not only benefit their technological and ideological superiority, but also further improve their country's security.
That an aggressor nation that dominates space will then dominate the world. We just can't let that happen.
The space race can trace its origins all the way back to Germany during the Second World War, in which Nazi scientists followed Hitler's orders of researching and building successful operational missiles. With Germany's innovative tendencies, the United States and the Soviet Union took these ideas as a model to their own, realizing how important rocket research would be to the military, and therefore each country recruited the top Nazi German scientists to aid with their research. After all the rivalry between both superpowers, there was now a way of spying on the enemy or directly attacking the enemy from a different angle, gaining military control from outer space, which supposed a major advancement to the war. But apart from this, racing to space was mostly a matter of acquiring international prestige, proving the superiority of each country's ideology and power over the other one. In 1955, the US and USSR claimed they would be launching satellites into the orbit, therefore initiating the space race. As the United States initially claimed the act, the Soviets perceived their Western opponent's statement as a challenge, and thus correspondingly established a commission whose goal was to beat the US in putting a satellite into space. As the two superpowers announced their participation in the race, nations such as France decided to join, not to win, but to develop technological advancement for their nation. The space race officially began on November 4, 1957, as the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, an artificial satellite, which positioned the United States under their lead in the race. A month later, on November 3rd, the Soviets set another record as they launched Sputnik 2, but this time with a living creature on board, the first to ever go into space. Laika, a Siberian husky. Regardless of such accomplishments, 4 months later, the Americans caught up onto the Soviets' progress by successfully sending their first satellite into orbit, Explorer 1. The first living creature had already been dispatched into space, but this time it was a man's turn. The 12th of April of 1961 would be a date to remember, as the Soviets were once again on the top lead, sending Yuri Gagarin, a Russian astronaut, into space in Vostok 1 spacecraft. Competitively, 3 weeks later, the United States planned to launch a shuttle known as Freedom 7, with the first American astronaut to ever orbit the Earth, Alan Shepard. However, Shepard's craft did not orbit the Earth, but instead, a year later, on 20th of February of 1962, the actual first American, John Glenn, orbited the Earth on the Friendship 7 spacecraft. Regardless of the U.S. competitive behavior and the fact that they were able to catch up on the Soviet Union's advances, the Americans felt rather humiliated for taking second place in the space race.
Kennedy has White House counsel Theodore Sorensen ask NASA what space project might beat the Russians. Their answer is a moon landing.
Can we be the first to do that? Can we beat the Russians to that? They said, yes, that is sufficiently far off that the U.S. could probably, if it started now, have a chance of beating the Russians to that.
For this reason, in 1961, President Kennedy boldly announced to the Congress of the United States that he was going to be the first to send a man to the moon.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
Kennedy felt this was an important step for the country, as well as the Western world's overall development. Therefore, after years of flight testing, the Apollo 11 spacecraft was finally launched into space on July 16, 1969. The crew members included astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. The trip to the moon lasted 3 days, and upon their arrival, Armstrong and Aldrin began their descent to the moon. On July 20, 1969, the shuttle landed on the moon, and Neil Armstrong stepped outside, becoming the first man to ever walk on the moon. With his first step on the moon, Armstrong said, "That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind." By landing on the moon, the United States in essence had successfully won the space race that had begun with Sputnik's launch in 1957. For their part, the Soviets made 4 failed attempts to launch a lunar landing craft between 1969 and 1972, including a spectacular launch pad explosion in July of 1969. From beginning to end, the Americans' public attention was captivated by the space race and the various developments by the USSR and United States space programs, which were thoroughly covered and promoted in national media. This, however, was not only an American victory, but the beginning of future discoveries that would drastically change the modern world. The space race came along with some long-term effects which would change the way of living and viewing new technologies. In many regions of the United States, the race changed their perspective and therefore the educational system, giving more importance and emphasis to subjects such as math and science. Additionally, the government realized the importance of exploring the unknown world outside of Earth, and therefore started to subsidize money in prioritizing spatial discoveries.